here we are today. We're back again. I'm going to talk about the Mario Kart expansion and courses, the 8 that we've gotten so far. I really wanted to get into this, especially after hearing a ton of the other opinions here on YouTube. I just disagree. I've been disagreeing with people so often, just silently in my head, that I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm going to go ahead and share some thoughts because I maybe have a slightly different perspective on just what I prioritize in the game and how I experience it, all that kind of stuff. But to start out, I have to apologize for the footage. The footage looks okay, but compared to the actual gameplay, it's junk. For some reason, the frame rate just doesn't happen. I had all the settings right, and it would only get to like 30-ish frames per second with the recording, despite the fact that this capture card, advertises 60 frames, 1080p. It just doesn't. They just lie, I guess. I'm tired. I don't want to spend $100 or more on an Elgato. If someone has an old one that they want to sell for like, I don't know, $60, let me know, I guess. I would happily do that, but sorry if it makes your eyes hurt. Now, me and Mario Kart. The GameCube was my first home console. That was the first one that our family had, even that was a somewhat controversial decision at the time, and we just spent way too much time playing those games. The first 3 games we got were Madden 04, I think, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2, and Mario Kart Double Dash. Across every one of those, we played for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. If I had to estimate, I would say years of my childhood and teenage life were dedicated to playing that game specifically, and absolutely loved it. I absolutely love seeing Double Dash courses elsewhere in the DS game, and even in Mario Kart 8 and 8 Deluxe. We have some of those courses. I love it. I love how they update them. It's wonderful. I have a real nostalgic soft spot, and I also just think the game feels great. Like a lot of other GameCube games, it just felt more fast and frantic than even a bunch of modern games. Like we always talk about how Melee feels just so much faster than even contemporary Smash, and it was absolutely there for Double Dash with me too. I didn't have any other consoles after that until the Switch, actually. But a friend of mine in college had a Wii U, of all things. Hey, Dylan, if you're listening, I hope you're doing all right. I know we haven't talked for a while, but he's a good guy. I think he's out in New York still. He had a Wii U, and I was like, oh, wait, Mario Kart still exists. There's a new one. It looks cool. I played that one for at least 100 hours. I didn't want to hog it, of course, because it wasn't my system, but I still played that a lot. I was extremely familiar with the base courses, and then eventually we got the DLC courses for that as well, which were included in Deluxe from the get-go. And in fact, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, like plenty of other people, that was the system seller game that encouraged me to get a Switch. And it was just on one random day, I was like, I want to play Mario Kart real bad. I guess I'm getting a Switch. So that's my general feelings about Mario Kart. I'm a big fan. I haven't played absolutely every game. I think most of them except for the GBA one and Wii, I never really played all that much. Every other one, tons and tons of hours in just about every one of them. I'm not ranked. I'm not like some Division 3 player or anything like that. I don't play competitively. I barely ever play online, partially because it's mostly 100 or 150cc, which sucks unless you're doing like a private party thing. Don't enjoy it, and I'm sure that if I played against some pro players, I would do very poorly. But generally speaking, I am not bad at Mario Kart. I've spent a ton of time with it. I think I am decent at it, and I have specific preferences when I'm playing 8 specifically, because as anyone else out there who plays the game already knows, the driving, the physics, and specifically the precision of the drifting is so good. I would even say that it rivals some of the best AAA driving games in general, not just karting games, but like the drifting feels so good. You can put some of the smaller cars exactly where you want them to go. You can really nail your lines. It's just incredibly exciting, and for that reason, when I play Mario Kart 8, I am playing 200cc versus mode, either no items or no items or coins. That's it. I don't like items. If I'm playing with other people, items are fun. It's frantic. It's crazy. But on my own, I just want to drive. I want to focus in. It's almost a meditative state when I'm playing in this game, and that's what I really appreciate. And specifically, that's something I wanted to bring up because in discussions about the booster pass pack course DLC gold pass courses that we got the first 8 of over the last couple weeks. A lot of people have been talking about like, well, I like to play these with friends, or I really prefer to play this kind of stuff online. And how does it work online, by the way? Because not everybody has it anyway. Or just I really appreciate the visuals of the courses more than anything, and the driving is over here, and I wish we got new characters. And personally, I just want to know how they feel to drive. Yes, the visuals are important. I have some issues there too, don't you worry. But the biggest priority for me is how it feels to drive. And honestly, there's no competition aspect to it. Even if you set the CPUs on hard, like, you're never gonna see them. They're not that difficult. It's basically just me driving alone. Maybe I'll do time trials. It's a very peaceful thing for me, and I want to focus on getting my racing lines right. I want to focus on just nailing a path. I just want to have a good time, and visuals are part of that, sure, but it's ultimately down to specifics of track design. Let's go ahead and talk about just each of the tracks individually. Very briefly, I have some footage here of each one. Okay, so what do we have first? We got Paris Promenade, and that is a course from Mario Kart Tour, the mobile game, which I played briefly and hated very much, so I stopped playing it forever. I've heard people talking about how, in fact, I'll name it. It's okay. I'm not mad at anyone for having a different opinion here, but I was specifically watching one of the episodes of the Kit and Krista podcast show. These are two people who used to do a show, Nintendo Minute. They're marketing professionals who are working within Nintendo for 10, 11 years. And I was never a big fan of Nintendo Minute, but so far I've really been enjoying their this show that they've been doing independently after leaving Nintendo. And in their most recent episode, they were saying, oh yeah, like, it's really cool to see real world cities, real world landmarks. These are some of the most enjoyable courses. And I disagree. I mean, obviously I'm not, whatever. I respect the opinion and everything, but personally, this is one of my least favorite things. So this also applies to the Tokyo course that we got. But like, things based on very realistic environments and specifically real world cities, I kind of hate. Now, just specifically Paris Promenade, just in terms of course design, sure, we have the really fun element where the third lap is a reverse version of the course, so you have to stay frosty and handle different turns and everything, which the first couple times through is very exciting. It's something very different. But beyond that, like, it's tons of right angles, more or less. If you look overhead, it's going to be tons of right angles because it's a city. That's the idea. We also get a ton of that in Ninja Hideaway, which we'll be talking about later. But Paris Promenade, okay, so here's the thing. These city courses, Paris Promenade in particular, really doesn't feel all that much like it's well designed as a race course because of those turns specifically, and because a lot of turns are only communicated via fences and barriers or via big flashing arrows. And that's not new. That's not like the worst designed Mario Kart course ever. We had that way back when in, is it Mushroom City on Double Dash? That was a thing there. And even here, after a few tries, you get a pretty good feeling for where the turns are going to be. You start to memorize it just naturally. You get your tactile memory going. But I still don't think that's a sign of especially good or enjoyable design. It's just like, almost at random, we decide, you just turn left here. Here's an arrow, and you won't be able to see it very well until you're like right up against it. Not a big fan of that. Not a big fan of that. Again, it doesn't really offer tons of pleasant curves. There are a couple of curves, including this one tricky one, where I'm still not sure whether it's possible to hold one consistent drift through the whole thing. What kind of line you would need to pull that off. Specifically at 200cc, I wasn't really able to do it. Otherwise, I don't know, it's fine. I mean, the lighting, the general atmosphere is nice. Other people have already ripped on the visuals. And yes, in general, every single one of these courses kind of looks junky, and then it's a toss-up for each person as to whether or not they feel like that's distracting, whether they feel like it's good enough, whether it's just kind of pleasant, colorful, and that's all they care about. Personally, it's kind of distracting, less so in this course specifically. It's a pretty big whiplash going from the original courses designed for the game that were specifically designed for home console hardware, and then the stuff here coming from different sources, more or less coming from tour versions of all these tracks, that is just really simple and blocky and almost looks like, I don't know, Racing with Ryan or whatever that one's called. Like it looks more kiddie than anything else. The lighting and the textures are nowhere near as interesting or as pleasant to look at as a ton of the stuff in the base game. It is disappointing, not so much specifically with Paris Promenade, but I think it's time to move on. It's an okay course. It's fine. fine. It's fine. Toad Circuit. I've heard some people say this is their absolute worst, least favorite track in maybe the whole game or just all Mario Kart in general. It's from 7, right? That was the 3DS game. I'm sure other people have pointed this out, but there might be minor differences. I'm sure the original version was longer, and that's definitely one of the biggest criticisms here is it is so darn short, like well under 2 minutes at 200cc. It might even be like 90 seconds or something. I don't outright hate it, and just from like the driving angle, yes, it's baby time easy, and like there's nothing really to see or look at. There's the big toad balloon, I suppose, but other than that, it's like, okay, here is a Mario Kart course set in the Mario world with racing things on it, and that's about it. However, you could probably hold a single drift through like half of the entire course. It almost reminds me of Moo Moo Meadows in that way, where sometimes you can just kind of cruise and really nail these incredible drifts, and it feels wonderful. Also, to my memory, this course includes some nice banking, and in general, big fan of banked track, angled track that really helps you sort of, nail your lines with pinpoint precision. It also just feels more exciting. It feels more like racing as opposed to just, here is a city, everything's flat, have fun. So yeah, Toad Circuit is not making me angry. It is okay. Kind of ugly, certainly not very exciting, and over so quick that it may as well have not happened. Like you may as well have just raced it in a dream. That's how brief it is. So that's Toad Circuit. Choco Mountain, based loosely on the N64 original, which I always loved quite a bit. I especially like it in Mario Kart DS, which by the way is one of the best Mario Kart games. I came to it super late. It is so good, especially the classic courses feel so fast and crazy. It's great. Anyway, this Choco Mountain, again, feels very short, feels very bland. I mean, I get that it was basically monochromatic in the original, but whatever. You have the falling rocks, okay. The hills are nice. They sort of softened the hills. It's no longer just like a triangle at the top. It's not just a harsh triangle. Those are pretty fun. You can really get some speed tricking off those guys. Feels pretty good. Again, Coconut Mall. This has been controversial, especially for people who grew up with the Wii game. I did not. I haven't played it very much at all. And it's great. It's a lovely little, environment and everything. Here, yes, it's been very simplified. I don't care that the escalators are now like walkolators or whatever those are called. What do they call them in Australia? I forget. So I wasn't crazy about it. And also, yeah, other people have pointed out, okay, there's just the cars that were moving at the end of the course, which is kind of a challenge. Now they're just sitting there, and it's like, okay, they may as well be like a tree or a rock or something. That's not especially cool. It's fine. It's another very short course. Most of these are incredibly short, aren't they? But we're moving on to Tokyo Blur. And honestly, I don't really remember it. I mean, like, I know what happens. It changes up the last lap again, or I guess it changes a little bit with each lap, but the most significant change feels like the third lap where you go on the highway ramp thing or whatever. I don't tend to notice any of the surroundings much at all, except for the initial flyover shots before the race actually starts. Other than that, it's another city course. There's more, not necessarily verticality, but there are actual ramps here and things, so you're on different elevations. You sort of fly into the finish line, I think just on the third lap. So there are neat elements, but in general, I find it incredibly forgettable. And something else that I'm noticing here, and something that I really would have wanted specifically from a Tokyo-based course, is make it at night. Why can't this be at night? And in fact, now that I'm looking at all the courses, every one of them, except for Ninja Hideaway, looks like it's more or less set at like noon, high noon. We just have bright sunlight during the day. I guess Paris Promenade, you could argue that it's like early morning. That's something, but the vast majority of these, it's just like, the boring part of the day when you don't want to be outside, no shadow time. Let's have that be the setting and the lighting for most of our, yuck. Make the Tokyo one at night. Or how about a variation? That would be cool, right? Like the Animal Crossing course, you get a couple versions, kind of at random. All of a sudden, it's Tokyo at night, and we get to see some neon or just the street lamps and stuff, and it makes some of the turns a little bit more difficult. That could have been cool. Didn't do it. Okay, whatever. Shroom Ridge. This has been a controversial one. Okay, yeah, it's from 7. It's from the 3DS game. It's fine. I've raced it before. This still feels like a different version. I assume it is than what we've gotten in the past. But here, yeah, I've heard a lot of people saying like, okay, for one thing, it's not very creative. It's just snaking left and right turns, tons of hairpins, kind of annoying. Then you got a couple tunnels and you have cars everywhere that you can't really predict. And so it becomes extra challenging and just kind of annoying, hitting stuff all the time, hitting walls, whatever. I kind of love it. Now, aside from, the critiques that we mentioned earlier, visual stuff, lighting stuff, and also being very short, I still think this one's pretty darn short. I should get times for all of these. I'll see if I can do that. Anyway, it is actually pretty fun, specifically because it's actually kind of challenging. And again, as I said earlier, I only ever race at 200cc, so it is actually pretty darn difficult to make some of these turns, especially for someone like me who hasn't played the course all that much. I don't have it memorized by any means, and some of these turns are just so tight. You got the hairpins and stuff that it's like, oh wow, you were on that brake. You were on the brake while drifting, while not drifting. You were letting go of drifts. I was letting off the acceleration quite a bit too. There are moments where you just have to straight up improvise, and that's mostly thanks to the traffic. You can learn the turns eventually. I've raced it 4 or 5 times. I feel pretty confident in it now. But you really have to account for the cars. Depending on how it's set up, there are probably a few different starting phases for where cars are laid out, things like that. But you really have to take those into account. You have to make moves depending on where one happens to come up after these blind turns. I love it. I'm not telling you to love it. I'm not saying it's the best one out of the bunch or anything like that. But for me, not racing with items, basically racing alone most of the time at a pretty fast speed, yeah, it's kind of challenging. The cars make it even more challenging. They force me to mess up my lines. They force me to make different decisions, and it's been fun. Sky Garden, next to nothing to say about it. Extremely short. Someone already made a video like, hey, this is not the original version. This is the version from Tour or something else. It's cheap. It's kind of junky. I have very little to say about it. It's fine. There's a little bit of banking, which again, I enjoy basically whenever it shows up. Visually, it's neat, I suppose, albeit somewhat simplistic. Moving on to Ninja Hideaway, which has been a lot of people's favorites, I think, of this bunch. It is from Tour. It's decently pretty. It's definitely more elaborate, both mechanically and visually, than plenty of the other courses, and specifically the other courses from Mario Kart Tour. Yeah, we have traditional Japanese architecture. We have cherry blossoms. We got shy guys acting like ninjas for some reason, and some elaborate traps and things. It's a neat idea for certain, but, and this is something that I do agree with in terms of other conversations that people have been having about these courses, almost everything is a right angle. Almost every turn is based around a right angle, and okay, I get it's a building. Okay, yeah, right angles are everywhere inside the building. That doesn't mean it's fun. And yes, there are ways, I'm sure there are ways to do it really well, but just as someone who likes playing the game, I don't feel like I'm going to be picking this one all that often because I never feel like I'm settled into it. I never feel like I'm really enjoying my time with it. I just feel like I'm dealing with it. You know what I mean? I'm getting through it, which is not an ideal. And I guess that'll lead to sort of the closing section where I just talk about overall impressions and my general feelings moving forward into the many other courses, the rest of the 48. So what, 40 more courses that we're going to get over another couple years, I suppose. The release schedule, I get it. I understand, this probably isn't a priority, so they'll drip feed them like they drip feed so much other stuff. However, I feel like it's going to give us more than enough time to get kind of tired of each new set after it comes out. You know what I mean? This has only been out for what, a week or so? I'm already getting tired of some of these, especially my least favorite ones, obviously. But if they're a few months apart at a time, I feel like it's going to end up being the same situation with the original game where just, if you play them long enough, if you race them long enough, who cares? I know what it's going to be. I have everything memorized, and if I don't enjoy it that much to begin with, why go back to it? So I'm a little bit concerned there. Other people have definitely had very positive overall impressions, and they're very excited at the idea of getting so many other courses. And for me, I don't know, so much of this feels like demi courses. Do you know what I mean? Not only are they incredibly short, which is maybe one of the worst things, because we still don't have the option to increase the lap count. And so when a course is just over a minute long, why do it? Why even bother? And I don't see this changing. Some people are sort of theorizing that, oh, this was the first batch, so maybe they didn't put as much work into them. What are you talking about? Who knows how long they've been working on this? They just announced it recently. That doesn't mean they started work on the day of the direct and they're like, oh my gosh, we have 2 days. We have like a week to get this all done. No, it could have been months. And I just don't, again, it's not a priority. I don't see them putting a ton of work into all the additional courses we're going to get. And here's the tricky part. Here's the tricky part where it might actually injure me a little bit, is if, I know it's going to happen, if we end up getting Double Dash courses, but we specifically get Mario Kart Tour versions of those, and they're ugly and shorter, it might break my heart. And that's not really an experience that I want from DLC that I paid for. I'm not super optimistic about the whole thing. Yes, at a very base level, having more courses to race is cool, gives you a reason to get back into it, gives you more to do with the game. They're adding a massive amount, but like, what if it's equivalent to giving us like a big bag of flour when you're waiting at the restaurant? Do you know what I mean? Like, originally we had all these great baked goods and stuff, and they were delicious and tasty and a variety of flavors and types, and now they're like, oh, we're gonna give you a bunch more. Hey, that sounds great, cool, I'll do that as part of a prefix sort of deal. And then they just hand you a big bag of flour and they're like, here you go. And I'm like, that's not really what I wanted, but look, there's so much of it. Wow. Okay. Thanks for stopping by.